They say that with age comes wisdom, but no one ever mentions how that wisdom can break your heart. My name is Elena Martinez, and at 63 years old, I thought I had experienced every type of pain life could offer, till that Sunday lunch when I learned that sometimes family can be your greatest wound. I've always been proud of the home my late husband Robert and I built together. A modest 2-story colonial in Connecticut with a garden that blooms with memories. It's where we raised our only son, Michael, pouring every dream and dollar into ensuring he had opportunities we never did. After Robert passed 5 years ago, this house became both my sanctuary and my prison of grief. Michael's weekly visits were the only thing that kept me tethered to this world. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special," Michael had said over the phone 3 months ago. The excitement in his voice made my heart flutter with hope. At 35, my son had focused solely on his career as a surgeon, never making time for love. Her name is Sofia Herrera. That first meeting was at a restaurant downtown. She was stunning caramel skin, obsidian eyes that sparkled when she spoke, and a smile that seemed to radiate warmth. Sofia told us she had come to America as a refugee from Mexico 2 years ago, escaping violence and seeking a better life. "Michael has told me so much about you, Mrs. Martinez," she said, her accent wrapping around each word like silk. "He says you were a nurse for many years." 42 years, I replied, feeling a surge of pride. "I worked at Memorial Hospital, primarily in the pediatric ward." "That's beautiful," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Healers recognize each other, I think." I wanted to love her immediately, for Michael's sake, for my own. The way my son looked at her like she hung the moon and stars reminded me of how Robert used to gaze at me. What Sofia didn't know, what Michael had apparently forgotten to mention, was that I had worked for 15 years in a predominantly Latino community. My Spanish might not be perfect, but those years had taught me more than medical procedures. I had learned the language, the culture, the subtle nuances of communication that go beyond words. As weeks passed, Sofia became a fixture in our lives. Michael brought her to Sunday lunches at my home, and I watched their relationship bloom. She complimented my cooking, asked about family photos, and even brought me hand-picked flowers. I began to imagine grandchildren, holiday gatherings filled with laughter again. Last Sunday started like any other. I prepared my specialty Robert's mother's recipe for paella that I'd perfected over decades. The house smelled of saffron and memories. Michael arrived first, helping me set the table, his face flushed with happiness. "She might be the one, Mom," he whispered, while arranging the silverware. "I've never felt this way about anyone." Sofia arrived 30 minutes late, apologizing profusely. "Traffic was horrible," she explained, kissing my cheek. "But your home always feels worth the journey, Elaine." Lunch progressed pleasantly enough. Michael shared stories from the hospital, careful to omit the gory details he knew turned my stomach. Sofia spoke about her volunteer work with recent immigrants, her face animated with passion. I noticed she wore a new bracelet platinum with diamonds that caught the light. Michael's salary was generous, but that piece seemed extravagant even for him. It was when her phone rang that everything changed. She glanced at the screen and excused herself, stepping into the hallway. "It's my mother," she explained. "She worries if I don't answer." From where I sat, I could hear her voice drop to a whisper. My ears perked up naturally when I heard her switch to rapid Spanish. Most of it was innocent enough descriptions of the food, mentions of Michael's work. Then her tone shifted. "La vieja es tan estúpida como creíamos," she sighed, her voice cold and unfamiliar. "The old woman is as stupid as we thought." I felt the blood drain from my face as I pretended to focus on my plate. "Michael está completamente enamorado. Tendré los documentos y acceso a la herencia pronto." Michael is completely in love. "I'll have the documents and access to the inheritance soon." A pause. She laughed softly. "No. Ella no sospecha nada. Es solo una anciana solitaria y desesperada por compañía tan patética." "No, she doesn't suspect anything. She's just a lonely old woman desperate for company. So pathetic." My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my water glass. 42 years of maintaining composure in medical emergencies served me well in that moment. I kept my face neutral, my breathing steady. But inside, something was shattering, not just my trust in Sophia, but my faith in my ability to protect my son. When she returned to the table, her smile was back in place, perfect and practiced. "My mother sends her regards," she said, reaching for Michael's hand. "She can't wait to meet you both someday." Michael beamed at her, completely oblivious to the viper he had brought into our home. I watched as she tenderly wiped a crumb from his lip, as she laughed at his jokes, as she played the role of devoted girlfriend flawlessly. In that moment, I made a decision. I would not confront her, not yet. Years of watching patients had taught me that sometimes the most important thing is careful observation. I needed evidence, I needed a plan, and most importantly, I needed to protect my son from both the pain of betrayal and whatever scheme this woman was orchestrating. As they prepared to leave that afternoon, Sophia hugged me tightly. "Thank you for another wonderful lunch, Alina. You're like the mother I lost long ago." I hugged her back, matching her performance. "You're always welcome in my home, dear," I replied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. After they left, I sat alone in my kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and dangerous knowledge. The weight of what I'd learned pressed down on me like a physical thing. My son was in love with a liar, possibly a criminal, and I was the only one who knew. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in years. David Reyes, a former patient's father who worked as a private investigator. My fingers hovered over his number as doubts crept in. Was I overreacting? Misinterpreting? No. I'd heard what I'd heard. "Hello, David. It's Alina Martinez. I need your help with something discreet. It's about my son." As I hung up the phone, I gazed at the family photos lining my hallway wall. Robert and I on our wedding day, Michael's graduation from medical school, happy moments frozen in time. I made a silent promise to my late husband and to my son. This woman would not destroy what we had built. The game had begun, but Sophia didn't realize one crucial thing: she wasn't the only one who could wear a mask. I've never considered myself particularly tech-savvy. My son Michael always teased me about my dinosaur ways, especially when I still printed emails or asked him to help me download apps on my phone. But that night, as I sat in my dimly lit study, I became a different woman altogether. First things first, I needed information about Sophia Herrera. Real information, not the carefully crafted story she had been feeding my son and me for months. I started with a simple internet search, expecting to find little. To my surprise, her social media presence was sparse, suspiciously so for a woman in her early 30s. A Facebook page created just 3 years ago, an Instagram account with carefully curated photos, none older than 2 years. It was as if Sophia Herrera hadn't existed before then. I remembered something from my nursing days. One of the doctors I worked with, Dr. Ramirez, had married a private investigator, a lovely woman named Carmen, who had helped the clinic pro bono when we had issues with insurance fraud. I hadn't spoken to them in years, but this was an emergency if there ever was one. The next morning, I found their number in my old address book. Yes, I still kept one of those. My hands trembled slightly as I dialed. "Carmen, it's Alina Martinez. I need your help." 2 days later, I was sitting across from Carmen in a small cafe 15 miles from my home, far enough that I wouldn't risk running into anyone who knew me. Age had touched Carmen too, her once jet black hair now silver at the temple, lines around her eyes that weren't there before, but her gaze remained sharp, observant. "What you're asking isn't simple, Alina," she said after I explained the situation, "but it's not impossible either. If this woman is who you suspect, someone using a false identity, there will be inconsistencies, paper trails that don't quite connect. It will take time and money. I have both," I replied, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was $5,000 in cash, nearly all of my emergency saving. "My son's happiness is worth every penny." Carmen nodded, understanding the depth of a mother's determination. "I'll start today." "But Alina," she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper, "be careful. If she is what you suspect, confronting her without solid evidence could be dangerous for you and for Michael." The next 3 weeks were an exercise in patience and acting. Every time Michael called, I had to pretend everything was normal. Every time he brought Sophia over, I had to smile and play the loving, unsuspecting future mother-in-law, all while knowing what she had said about me, what she planned to do. It was during one of these visits that I caught another glimpse behind her mask. Michael had stepped out to take a work call, leaving Sophia and me alone in the kitchen. "You have such beautiful things, Alina," she commented, running her fingers along the edge of a crystal vase, a wedding gift from David's mother. "This house must be worth a fortune now, especially in this neighborhood." "It's just an old house," I replied, carefully measuring my words. "But it's home." She smiled, that practiced smile that now seemed so hollow to me. "You should consider downsizing. At your age, all this space, the stairs. Michael and I were discussing it. We could help you find a nice condo, something easier to manage." My blood boiled at her audacity. They had been discussing my living situation, planning to move me out of my own home. I gripped the counter to steady myself. "Oh, I'm quite comfortable here," I said, forcing a smile. "This house holds all my memories with David. I don't think I could bear to part with." Something flashed in her eyes, frustration, perhaps, before she quickly composed herself. "Of course, I understand. I just worry about you, alone in such a big place. The predator masquerading as a caretaker." I nearly laughed at her transparency. Later that evening, after they left, Carmen called. Her voice was tense, excited. "Alina, I found something. Can you meet tomorrow?" We met at the same cafe. Carmen brought a thick folder, which she opened carefully, spreading photos and documents before me. "Sofia Herrera doesn't exist, at least, not the one you know," she began. "The real Sofia Herrera was born in Oaxaca, Mexico, 29 years ago. Her parents were indeed journalists, but they're very much alive, running a small community newspaper. They reported their daughter's identity stolen 2 years ago when someone opened credit cards in her name." My heart pounded as Carmen continued, showing me photos of the real Sofia, a plain, serious-looking young woman who bore only a passing resemblance to the glamorous creature who had ensnared my son. "Your Sofia, or whatever her real name is, has done this before. I found patents, Alina, 3 different identities in 5 years. 3 different men from wealthy family. She marries them, gains access to their assets, then disappears, leaving financial ruin in her wake." Carmen pulled out more photos, surveillance shots of my Sofia with different hair colors, different names, hanging on the arms of different men. In one, dated just 3 years ago, she was blonde, calling herself Isabella Torres, married to a real estate developer in Florida who later committed suicide after discovering massive fraud. "She's good," Carmen admitted. "Changes enough details each time to avoid detection, but she made mistakes with the Sofia identity. Used some of the same documentation patterns as before." "Does she work alone?" I asked, my mouth dry as I stared at the evidence of this elaborate Carmen shook her head. "There's someone else involved, likely the mother she was speaking to on the phone, a partner or handler. We're still tracing that connection." I sat back, overwhelmed by the scope of the deception. My poor Michael, so intelligent in his professional life, but so naive in matters of the heart. How could I show him all this without breaking him? "There's more," Carmen said gently. "She's accelerating her timeline, based on her previous pattern. She usually spends 12 to 18 months establishing the relationship before making any significant financial move. But according to your son's credit report, you pulled my son's credit report." I interrupted, shocked. "It's part of the standard investigation in these cases," Carmen explained apologetically. "And it's good I did. There have been recent inquiries from mortgage company. Is Michael planning to buy property?" I shook my head slowly. "Not that he's mentioned. Well, someone using his information is exploring substantial loans. And there's been activity with his investment accounts, transfers to new accounts opened just weeks ago that required dual authorization." My hands began to shake. "She's already accessing his money. It appears so. And based on what we know of her previous cases, she's likely preparing to clean him out and disappear. The fact that she's moving faster than her usual pattern suggests she might be under pressure. Maybe debts of her own, or demands from whoever she's working with." I gathered the documents, my mind racing. "What do I do now, Carmen? Go to the police?" Carmen sighed. You could, but these cases are complicated. Without Sophia committing an actual crime yet, they might not take immediate action. And if she realizes she's being investigated, she vanishes, possibly taking a significant amount of Michael's assets with her. So I wait until she steals from my son. I asked incredulously. No, Carmen said firmly. We set a trap. Thanksgiving is coming up, right? You mentioned Michael wants to announce their engagement then. I nodded, the thought making me ill. Perfect timing. By then, I'll have completed the full investigation. We'll have everything we need to expose her completely, and Carmen hesitated. I have contacts in federal law enforcement who handle identity theft and immigration fraud. If what we suspect about her documentation is true, they would be very interested in meeting her. As I drove home, the folder of evidence locked in my trunk. A strange calm settled over me. The initial shock and anger had crystallized into something harder, more focused. I thought of all the patients I'd cared for over the decade, how I'd fought for them when they couldn't fight for themselves. Now, it was time to fight for my son. You picked the wrong old lady to underestimate, Sophia, I whispered to my empty car. This estúpida vieja is about to teach you the lesson of your life. The weeks leading up to Thanksgiving were the longest of my life. Each day was a delicate balancing act, gathering evidence while maintaining the facade of the unsuspected, slightly doddering mother-in-law that Sophia believed me to be. I even began to play up this role, occasionally forgetting things or asking her to explain simple technology. I could see the smug satisfaction in her eyes each time, the barely concealed contempt. Oh, Alina, let me help you with that, she would say, taking my phone to show me how to use a feature I'd been using for years. Technology can be so confusing for your generation. It took every ounce of self-control not to reveal that I knew exactly what she was doing. Instead, I would thank her profusely, feeding her ego, making her believe her plan was working perfectly. Meanwhile, Carmen's investigation was yielding disturbing results. Sophia, whose real name we discovered was Alejandra Vasquez, had a pattern more extensive than we initially thought. She had been running variations of this con for nearly a decade, across 3 different countries. The woman was no amateur. She was a professional predator who targeted specific types of men, successful, somewhat isolated, often with family money or assets. Men like my Michael, the woman I now thought of as Alejandra, was becoming bolder by the day. She had convinced Michael to add her name to one of his bank accounts for household expenses as they planned their future. She had been subtly pushing him to revise his will and life insurance policy, and most alarmingly, she had been encouraging him to help me simplify my finances by giving him power of attorney. Your mother is getting older, Michael, I overheard her saying one evening when they thought I was napping in the other room. What if something happens and you can't access her accounts to help her? You're a lawyer. You know how complicated these things can become without proper planning. My son, bless his heart, seemed hesitant. I don't know, Sophia. Mom has always been fiercely independent about her finances. Dad made sure she knew how to handle everything before he passed. But that was years ago. Cariña. Saporidon people decline. Haven't you noticed how forgetful she's becoming? Just last week, she couldn't remember how to use the coffee maker she's had for years. I bit my tongue to keep from storming into the room. That coffee maker had been broken. I'd been waiting for the replacement part. But of course, Alejandra had twisted that into evidence of my decline. By mid-November, Carmen had compiled an ironclad case. The real Sofia Herrera had been located in Mexico City, where she worked as a kindergarten teacher. She had never been to the United States. Her identity had been stolen 2 years ago after she applied for a visa that was subsequently denied. Somehow, Alejandra had accessed this information and built her new persona around it. More disturbing were the connections Carmen had uncovered. Alejandra wasn't working alone. She was part of a small network, 3 women and 2 men who targeted wealthy families across North America. They shared information, resources, and sometimes identities. The mother she had spoken to on the phone was likely Magdalena Ortiz, a 50-something woman who often played the role of relative or friend to add credibility to their cons. They're good, Carmen admitted during our last meeting before Thanksgiving. Professional, they cover their tracks well. But they got sloppy this time, maybe because they're rushing. We have enough to not only stop them, but potentially bring down their entire operation. Carmen had coordinated with federal authorities who specialized in identity theft and immigration fraud. They had been building a case against this group for years, but had never been able to catch them in the act. Now, they had their chance. The plan was simple, but required perfect timing. The authorities would arrive during our Thanksgiving dinner, just after Michael made his anticipated engagement announcement. They would present their evidence, take Alejandra into custody, and hopefully get her to turn on her accomplices. It was a solid plan, but as the day approached, I found myself increasingly anxious. Not about whether we would succeed in exposing Alejandra. The evidence was overwhelming. No, my fear was for Michael. How would my son, my only child, handle the public revelation that the woman he loved was a fraud? That his judgment, his heart, had been so thoroughly deceived? The morning of Thanksgiving dawned clear and cold. I was up before sunrise, my mind too restless for sleep. As I prepared the turkey and chopped vegetables for the stuffing, I found myself thinking of David. What would he do in this situation? My late husband had always been the diplomatic one, the peacemaker. I was the fighter, the one who confronted problems head-on. Together, we had balanced each other perfectly. I'm doing this for him too, David, I whispered to the empty kitchen. She would have taken everything we built together, everything we saved for Michael. By 3 o'clock, my small house was filled with delicious aromas and the sound of football on the television. I had invited only a small group, Michael and Alejandra, of course, my brother Robert and his wife, and 2 longtime family friends who had known Michael since childhood. The federal agents would arrive at 5, posing as late-invited friends. When Michael and Alejandra arrived, she was radiant in an expensive burgundy dress I'd never seen before. She carried flowers and a bottle of premium champagne. For the celebration, she whispered to me with a conspiratorial wink as she handed me the bottle. My stomach turned at her audacity. Michael seemed nervous, constantly checking his pocket, where I knew he kept the vintage engagement ring that had belonged to his grandmother. The ring I had given him last month when he told me of his plans to propose at Thanksgiving dinner. Throughout the meal, I watched Alejandra work her magic on my family and friends. She was charming, attentive, the perfect future daughter. She complimented my cooking effusively, helped serve and clear dishes, and told amusing anecdotes that had everyone laughing. If I hadn't known the truth, even I would have been thoroughly enchanted. At 4:55 p.m., as we were finishing the main course, Michael stood up, champagne glass in hand. My heart began to pound so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. "Everyone, I have an announcement to make," he began, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. "This past year has been the happiest of my life, and it's all because of one person." He turned to Alejandra, who was beaming up at him, her eyes glistening with what I now recognized as perfectly practiced tears. Sofia Herrera came into my life when I least expected, but exactly when I needed her most. She has shown me what true partnership means, what real love feels like. Alejandra dabbed at her eyes delicately with her napkin. My brother Robert raised his glass in anticipation of the toast to come. The doorbell rang. Perfect timing. "Would you mind getting that, Mom?" Michael asked, slightly annoyed at the interruption of his big moment. "Of course," I said, rising from my chair with deliberate slowness. At the door stood 3 people, 2 men in suits who discreetly showed me their federal badges, and between them, a young woman in a simple blue dress. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, her face free of makeup, except for a touch of lipstick. She looked terrified, but determined. "Mrs. Martinez," one of the agents said quietly. "We're ready when you are." I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. "He's about to propose. Give him that moment, at least." The agent shook his head. "Better to stop it before it happened. Less legally complicated." Taking a deep breath, I led them into the dining room. "Michael," I said, my voice stronger than I expected, "before you continue, there are some people here who need to speak with Sofia specifically." All eyes turned to the doorway. The agents stepped forward, their presence immediately changing the atmosphere in the room. But it was the young woman between them who caused Alejandra to drop her champagne glass, shattering it on my hardwood floor. "Who is this?" Michael asked, confused, looking between me and the stranger. "My name is Sofia Herrera," the young woman said in accented English, her voice soft but unwavering. The real Sofia Herrera. And that woman is not me. The silence that followed felt eternal. I watched as all color drained from Alejandra's face, her practiced composure crumbling for the first time since I'd known her. Her eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal's, calculating escape route. Michael stood frozen, the grandmother's ring box now visible in his hand, his mouth slightly open in confusion. "Mom," he finally managed, looking to me for an explanation, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on?" Before I could answer, Alejandra's survival instincts kicked in. Her expression transformed, eyes filling with tears as she clutched Michael's arm. "Michael, I don't know who these people are or what they want, but they're lying. I'm Sofia, you're Sofia." Her voice broke perfectly on cue. "Please, make them leave. They're scaring me." "Mrs. Martinez invited us," one of the federal agents said calmly, stepping forward and discreetly showing his badge to the room. "I'm Agent Dawson with the FBI Identity Theft Division. We have some questions for the woman claiming to be Sofia Herrera." My brother Robert stood up, always the protective one. "Elena, what have you done?" He hissed at me. "What I had to do," I replied, my eyes never leaving Alejandra. "Michael deserves the truth." Alejandra's grip on my son tightened. "Michael, please. Your mother has always disliked me. Now she's trying to ruin our special moment. She's invented this whole thing because she can't stand to see you happy with someone else." It was a clever play making this about a jealous mother rather than her own deception. I could see uncertainty flicker across Michael's face. He'd always trusted me, but he loved this woman. Or at least, he loved who he thought she was. "The real Sofia Herrera has never left Mexico," Agent Dawson continued, gesturing to the young woman beside him. "Her identity was stolen 2 years ago. We have DNA evidence, fingerprint comparisons, and school records confirming this is the real Sofia Herrera from Oaxaca." The young woman, the real Sofia, stepped forward. "I am very sorry," she said gently to Michael. "I know this must be painful for you, but this woman stole my identity. She has done this to other families before yours." Alejandra's demeanor changed instantly. She dropped Michael's arm and straightened, her tears vanishing as if they'd never existed. When she spoke again, her voice was hard, all pretense gone. "You have nothing. No proof that will stand in court." She turned to Michael, her tone suddenly cold. "Your mother has been interfering in our relationship from day one. She hired these people to trick you because she's a bitter old woman who can't stand to see you happy." Actually, I finally spoke up. "I have more than enough proof." I nodded to Agent Dawson, who placed a thick folder on the dining table. "Financial records showing you've been systematically transferring Michael's money to offshore accounts. Documentation of your previous identities, Isabella Torres, Catalina Mendez, Valeria Lopez, and the men you've defrauded. Statements from your previous victims," as I listed the evidence. Alejandra's expression hardened further. The beautiful, loving woman my son had fallen for was gone, replaced by someone cold and calculating. "Show them," I said to Agent Dawson. He opened the folder and spread photographs across the table. Images of Alejandra with different hair colors, different names, hanging on the arms of different men wealthy, all eventually devastated financially or emotionally. Michael picked up one of the photos with trembling hands. It showed Alejandra as a blonde, kissing an older man on a yacht. The timestamp showed it was taken just 3 years ago. "This is from when you claimed to be working with Doctors Without Borders in Sudan," he said, his voice hollow. He looked up at her, devastation written across his face. Was any of it real? Any of it at all? For a moment, something like regret flickered across Alejandra's features. Then it was gone, replaced by cold pragmatism. "Business is business. Cariño." She spat the endearment like an insult. "You were an easy mark, lonely, wealthy, desperate for connection. Just like the others." Her cruel words hit Michael like physical blows. I watched my son, my brilliant, kind, successful son, crumple inward, his shoulders hunching as the full weight of the betrayal crashed down on him. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to shield him from this pain, to turn back time and prevent him from ever meeting this woman. "Michael," I began, moving toward him. He stepped away from me, his expression now twisted with anger and hurt. "You knew For how long, Mom? How long have you been investigating the woman I love behind my back? I felt as though I'd been slapped. Since that Sunday lunch, when I overheard her on the phone, calling me a stupid old woman and discussing how she planned to take your inheritance. You speak Spanish, Alejandra interrupted, genuinely surprised. Fluently, I replied coldly. A fact you might have discovered if you'd bothered to learn anything real about me instead of just seeing me as an obstacle to remove. And you didn't think to talk to me directly? Michael demanded, his voice rising. You went straight to federal agents and private investigators. You set up this public humiliation. Michael, she was already accessing your accounts, I explained desperately. She had started the process of transferring your assets. I had to move quickly. The second agent, who had been quietly observing until now, stepped forward. Mr. Martinez, your mother likely saved you from financial ruin. This woman and her associates have stolen millions from victims across 3 countries. They're professional. Alejandra laughed bitterly. And now what? You arrest me? I'll be out on bail within hours. I have resources you can't imagine. She looked directly at me, her expression venomous. And friends who won't be happy about this interference. That's where you're wrong, said Agent Das. We've already frozen all known accounts associated with your operation. Your mother, Magdalena Ortiz, was taken into custody this morning in Chicago. Your associate, Diego Fuentes, was arrested last night in Miami. The network is being dismantled as we speak. For the first time, real fear showed on Alejandra's face. Whatever she saw in the agent's expression must have confirmed her worst fears. I want to speak to my attorney, she said flatly. Of course, replied Agent Dawson, nodding to his partner, who began reciting Miranda rights. I turned to my stunned dinner guests. I'm so sorry about this, I said quietly. Perhaps it would be best if everyone left now. This is a family matter. As my brother and the others gathered their things in awkward silence, Michael remained standing by the table, staring at the scattered evidence of his fiancée's deception. The real Sofia Herrera hung back, clearly uncomfortable. Once the agents had escorted Alejandra out, handcuffed and silent, my dining room felt cavernous and cold. The half-eaten Thanksgiving dinner sat forgotten, the champagne Michael had planned to use for his toast, still uncorked. I need some air, Michael said abruptly, heading for the door. Michael, please, I started. Not now, Mom. His voice was ice. I can't even look at you right now. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone with the real Sofia Herrera. We stared at each other across my ruined Thanksgiving dinner. I am very sorry, she said softly. For all of this, I sank into a chair, suddenly feeling every one of my 67 years. You have nothing to apologize for. You're a victim in this too. Sofia fidgeted with the sleeve of her simple blue dress. The agents said I should stay in town for a few days for the investigation, but I have nowhere to go. I looked at this young woman, barely more than a girl, really thrust into the middle of our family tragedy through no fault of her own. The real Sofia Herrera, whose life had been stolen along with her identity. You'll stay here, I said decisively. I have a guest room. It's the least I can do. As I showed Sofia to the guest room upstairs, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Staying at the Marriott downtown. Need time to think. Please don't call. I set the phone down on the nightstand, feeling hollow. I had won the battle, exposed Alejandra for the fraud she was, potentially saved my son from financial ruin, but I feared I might have lost something far more precious in the process. My son's trust. The days following Thanksgiving unfolded in a blur of federal agents, paperwork, and deafening silence from Michael. I tried calling him twice, but he sent both calls straight to voicemail. His text messages were terse, practical, need my blue suit for court appearance. Forward, any mail from the bank. Nothing about how he was feeling, nothing about us. Meanwhile, the real Sofia Herrera had settled into my guest room. Initially, I'd expected her to be a temporary guest a night or two, while she gave statements to the authority. But as the investigation expanded, her stay extended. The quiet, reserved young woman gradually became a comforting presence in my empty house. You don't have to keep cooking for me, I told her on the third morning, as she set a plate of huevos rancheros in front of me. You're my guest, not my housekeeper. Sofia smiled shyly. Cooking helps me think. Besides, my mama always says food heals what medicine cannot. She hesitated before adding, your son, He has not called. I shook my head, the familiar ache intensifying. He's hurting and angry, especially with me. But you saved him, Sophia said, her brow furrowed in confusion. That woman would have taken everything. I also shattered his world, I replied, pushing the eggs around my plate. And I did it publicly, in front of our family and friends. I had my reasons, but I sighed. Michael has always valued his privacy. I violated that. Sophia sat across from me, her dark eyes serious. When I was 12, I fell in love with a stray dog. My parents warned me it might be dangerous, but I fed it anyway. One day, it bit my little brother badly enough for stitches. She traced a pattern on the tablecloth with her finger. I was so angry at my father when he had animal control take the dog away. I didn't speak to him for weeks. What happened? I asked. Eventually, I realized he had done what was necessary to protect our family. It wasn't about hurting me, it was about keeping us safe. She looked up at me. Your son will understand too. Give him time. I wanted to believe her, but the knot in my stomach tightened with each passing day of Michael's silence. Meanwhile, the investigation into Alejandra's network continued. Agent Dawson visited regularly, with updates and more questions. The scope of the fraud was staggering. Over a dozen victims across North America, millions stolen, identities ruined. We've never been able to get this close to them before, Dawson told me over coffee one afternoon. They usually vanish before we can build a case. You've helped us take down one of the most sophisticated identity theft rings we've tracked in years. I didn't do it for law enforcement, I said flatly. I did it for my son, and saved many future victims in the process, he countered. Some of their marks lost everything: homes, retirement funds, even family heirlooms. One man committed suicide. The magnitude of Alejandra's crimes made me shiver. How close had Michael come to a similar fate? The thought was unbearable. 1 week after Thanksgiving, as Sophia and I were washing dinner dishes, my doorbell rang. My heart leapt. Could it be Michael, finally coming to talk? But when I opened the door, I found Carmen, the private investigator, looking grave. Alina, we need to talk, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. There's been a development. In my living room, Carmen pulled out her tablet. One of Alejandra's associates hasn't been caught yet, a man named Raul Vega. He's the tech expert of their group, handles all their digital operations. We believe he's trying to access Michael's accounts remotely, but they're frozen, right? I asked, alarmed. The ones we know about, Carmen replied. But Michael's a wealthy man with diverse investments. We may not have identified everything. Have you told Michael? Carmen nodded. My colleague reached out. Michael's being uncooperative. He doesn't trust us because we worked with you. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course, in Michael's mind, we were all part of the same betrayal. I need access to his home office, Carmen continued, to check his computer for any backdoors or monitoring software Alejandra might have installed. But he refused. And you want me to convince him? I asked incredulously. He won't even take my calls. No, Carmen said, glancing toward the kitchen where Sophia was putting away dishes. I think we need a different approach. The next morning found Sophia and me standing outside Michael's downtown condo. Sophia clutched a foil-covered dish. Remember, just get him talking, I reminded her nervously. See if he'll let you check his computer for anything suspicious. Carmen says it would look like a normal program, but have unusual permissions. Sophia nodded solemnly. I understand. But are you sure he will even open the door for me? He doesn't know you, I said. And you're the only real victim here who had nothing to do with the humiliation as he sees it. When Michael opened the door, he looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing wrinkled clothes that suggested he'd slept in them. His expression shifted from irritation to confusion when he saw Sophia. Miss Herrera, he said, clearly surprised. What are you doing here? Sophia held out the dish. I made chilaquiles your mother mentioned there, your favorite breakfast. When he didn't immediately take the dish, she added softly, I'm sorry to intrude. I know what it's like to have your life turned upside down by that woman. I thought maybe you could use a friendly face. Something in Michael's rigid posture softened slightly. After a moment's hesitation, he stepped back. You'd better come in. I watched from my car across the street as my son let the real Sophia Herrera into his home. It was a simple act of kindness on her part, one victim reaching out to another, but seeing it filled me with a complex mix of gratitude and jealousy. My own son wouldn't let me near him, but he would welcome this stranger. 2 hours later, Sophia returned to the car, her expression thoughtful. "Well?" I asked anxiously. "What happened?" "He ate the shalakwal," she said with a small smile, "and talked a lot. He's very angry, Alina, hurt and embarrassed, but mostly angry at himself for being fooled." "Did he mention me?" I couldn't help asking. Sophia's eyes softened with sympathy. "He said you were right all along, but he's still upset about how you handled it. And the computer?" I checked it as Carmen showed me. There was something there, a program hiding in his system. I took photos with my phone as instructed. She pulled out her phone to show me. Michael didn't notice. He was making more coffee. I forwarded the images to Carmen immediately. Within minutes, she called back. "It's definitely Vega's work," she confirmed. "Remote access software disguised as a system utility. Tell Michael not to use that computer for anything financial or confidential. We'll send someone to clean it properly." I hesitated. Perhaps Sophia could tell him. He might take it better, coming from her. There was a pause on Carmen's end. "Alina, you can't avoid this conversation forever. He's your son." "I'm not avoiding anything," I snapped, more defensively than I intended. "I'm trying to protect him. He's been through enough." Sophia, sitting beside me in the car, gently touched my arm. "She's right, Alina. This can't be fixed through messengers. You need to talk to each other." I looked at this young woman wise beyond her years and felt a surge of affection for her. In just a week, she'd become something between a houseguest and a daughter, filling a void I hadn't realized was so empty. "I'll try," I promised, "but not today. Let's give him the information about the computer first. One crisis at a time." Sophia nodded, understanding in her eyes. "One step at a time. That's how we rebuild what's broken." As we drove home, I couldn't help wondering if what was broken between Michael and me could ever truly be repaired. The betrayal he felt was real, not just from Alejandra, but from me. In trying to protect him, had I irreparably damaged his trust? The weight of that question sat heavy on my heart as we turned onto my street. So preoccupied was I with thoughts of Michael that I almost missed the unfamiliar car parked in front of my house, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. "Are you expecting visitors?" Sophia asked, tensing beside me. A chill ran down my spine. No one. I slowed the car, my hands suddenly clammy on the steering wheel. The black sedan had government plates, not necessarily alarming given the ongoing investigation. But Agent Dawson always called before visiting. This unannounced presence felt wrong. "Should we call someone?" Sophia whispered, her eyes fixed on the vehicle. I was about to agree when the driver's door opened. A familiar figure emerged, Agent Dawson, followed by another man in a suit I didn't recognize. My momentary relief was quickly replaced by concern at their grim expressions. "Stay in the car," I instructed Sophia as I pulled into the driveway. "Alina, wait," she began, but I was already stepping out to meet the agents. "Agent Dawson," I called, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "I wasn't expecting you today." Dawson approached quickly, his usually composed demeanor visibly strained. "Mrs. Martinez, we need to talk." "Inside, preferably." The second man stayed by the car, scanning the neighborhood with practiced vigilance. "What's happened?" I asked, my stomach knotting. "Is it Michael? Is he all right?" "Michael's fine," Dawson assured me, "but there's been a development. We should discuss it privately." Sophia had ignored my instruction to stay in the car and now stood beside me, her presence somehow steadying. Once inside, Dawson declined my offer of coffee and got straight to the point. "Alejandra Vasquez escaped federal custody 3 hours ago." The room seemed to tilt. "That's impossible. You said she was being held under high security. She had help," Dawson said grimly. "Sophisticated help." The security cameras experienced a technical malfunction. 2 guards were found drugged. "We believe Raul Vega orchestrated it. He's the only one of their network still at large with the skills to pull this off." "Where would she go?" Sophia asked, her voice small. Dawson's expression grew even more serious. "That's why I'm here. We have reason to believe she might target you. Mrs. Martinez, you're the one who exposed her, cost her everything." and he hesitated. We found evidence in her cell, suggesting she was keeping detailed notes on your daily routine. A chill ran through me. She's coming here for revenge. We don't know for certain, but we need to take precautions. I've assigned an agent to watch your house, and we're monitoring Michael's residence as well. He handed me a card with a number scrawled on the back. Call this direct line immediately if you see anything suspicious. Anything at all. After Dawson left, Sophia and I moved through the house, closing blinds and double-checking locks. The agent assigned to us, a young woman named Rodriguez, positioned herself discreetly in an unmarked car across the street. Perhaps I should go to a hotel, Sophia suggested as we huddled in the kitchen. I've put you in enough danger. I shook my head firmly. No, we're safer together. Besides, this is my fight. I'm not abandoning you to face it alone. That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the house settling, every distant car engine had me sitting bolt upright, heart racing. I kept my cell phone and Dawson's card on my nightstand, the bedside lamp burning all night. Morning came with no incident, but the tension remained. I called Michael 3 times, desperate to warn him, but each call went to voicemail. Finally, I left a message explaining the situation in stark terms, begging him to call Agent Dawson, if not me. By mid-afternoon, my nerves were frayed raw. Sophia tried to distract me with cooking lessons, showing me how to properly prepare child's rellenos, but my hands shook too badly to be of any use. You should rest, she urged gently. You haven't slept. I'll keep watch. I was about to protest when my phone rang, Michael's ringtone. I nearly dropped the device in my haste to answer. Michael. Thank God, Mom, there was a break-in at my condo, he interrupted, his voice tightly controlled. Nothing was taken, but my place was searched. The FBI agent watching the building caught someone leaving, a man matching Vegas' description. He got away. Relief at hearing his voice mingled with fresh fear. Are you safe? Where are you? I'm with Agent Dawson at the field office. They're setting up a safe house. There was a pause, then. He thinks you should come to Edfos. Both you and Ms. Herrera. We'll be ready, I said immediately. When? They're sending someone to pick you up now. Pack only essentials. Another pause. Mom, I'm sorry I haven't called. Don't. I cut in, emotion threatening to overwhelm me. We can talk later. Just be safe. Within 20 minutes, Sophia and I had each packed a small bag. I tucked David's old service revolver, legally registered and maintained, into my purse. I hadn't fired it in years, but its weight was reassuring. A sharp knock at the door made us both jump. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a suit showing a federal badge. Still cautious, I called Agent Rodriguez on her cell phone, visible in the car across the street. She confirmed our escort had arrived, and only then did I unlock the door. The agent, Collins, according to his ID, was professionally brisk. We need to move quickly, Mrs. Martinez. The car's waiting. We followed him to a dark SUV with tinted windows. As he held the rear door open, I hesitated, a flicker of unease passing through me. Is Agent Dawson meeting us at the safe house? I asked. He's with your son, Collins replied smoothly. They'll join us later. Something felt off. I glanced at Agent Rodriguez's car, but it was now empty. Had she been called away? Or, your badge? I said suddenly. May I see it again? Collins' expression hardened imperceptibly. Mrs. Martinez, we don't have time for your badge, I repeated firmly. His hand moved, not toward his credentials, but inside his jacket. Instinct took over. I shoved Sophia backward and threw my purse at his face, buying us precious seconds. Run, I screamed. Back inside, Collins recovered quickly, lunging for Sophia as she stumbled. I grabbed the nearest object, a potted plant from my porch, and smashed it against his head. He staggered, but didn't fall. Sophia reached the door first, yanking it open. I was steps behind her when I felt Collins' hand close around my arm, jerking me backward with bruising force. Alina, Sophia cried out. Go, I ordered. Lock the door. Call Dawson. But instead of running inside, Sophia grabbed my heavy ceramic umbrella stand and swung it with surprising strength. It connected with Collins' knee with a sickening crack. He howled, his grip on me loosening enough that I could wrench free. We tumbled inside, slamming the door and throwing the deadbolt just as Collins crashed against it from the other side. The back door, I gasped, already moving. Make sure it's locked. Sophia ran to secure it while I fumbled for my phone. But before I could dial, the sound of breaking glass came from the kitchen, followed by Sophia's scream. I abandoned the phone and ran for David's revolver, still in my purse by the front door. Collins was pounding against the front entrance, the wood beginning to splinter around the lock. "Sophia," I called out, terror making my voice shrill. "Sophia." She appeared from the kitchen hallway, blood streaming from a cut on her forehead, eyes wide with pain. "There's someone coming in the back." We were trapped between two attackers. My mind raced, cataloging options and finding none. Then I remembered the attic access in the upstairs hallway. "Upstairs," I hissed, grabbing Sophia's arm. "Quickly!" We had just reached the stairs when the front door gave way with a resounding crack. Collins stumbled through, his face contorted with rage, his knee at an unnatural angle. I raised the revolver with both hands. "Stop right there," I commanded, my voice steadier than I felt. "I know how to use this." Collins froze, eyeing the weapon. Behind me, Sophia whimpered as footsteps approached from the kitchen. "The second intruder, Alejandra sends her regards." Collins sneered. From the kitchen doorway came a familiar voice, one that sent ice through my veins. Actually, I preferred to deliver them personally. I turned slightly, keeping the gun trained on Collins, to see Alejandra step into view. Gone was the polished beauty who had charmed my son. This Alejandra was harder, sharper, her hair pulled back severely, dressed entirely in black. "Hello, Alina," she said, her voice silky with malice. "I believe we have unfinished business." Time seemed to slow as I stood on my staircase, the weight of David's revolver steady in my hands. Behind me, Sophia trembled. Before me stood the woman who had nearly destroyed my son, flanked by her accomplice. In that crystallized moment, I felt a strange calm descend, the same focused clarity I'd experienced during emergencies in my nursing career. "Drop the gun, Alina," Alejandra said, taking a step forward. "We both know you won't shoot." I adjusted my grip, centering the barrel on her chest. "You don't know me at all." Something flickered across her face. Uncertainty, perhaps good. Let her wonder. "This is unnecessary," she continued, her tone reasonable, almost conversational. "I just want what's mine. Nothing here belongs to you," I replied evenly. She laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "Michael gave me access to his accounts, voluntarily. I earned that money, by lying, by stealing someone else's identity." I nodded towards Sophia, who stood rigid behind me. Alejandra's gaze shifted to the younger woman, her expression darkening. "The real Sophia Herrera. How touching that you two found each other." Her eyes narrowed. "You've cost me millions. Years of careful planning, destroyed in one night." "You'll find no sympathy here," I said. Collins shifted his weight, wincing as he tested his injured knee. "Let's stop playing games," he growled. "Where's the external drive?" I blinked, genuinely confused. "What drive?" "Don't play dumb," Alejandra snapped. "The backup drive with all of Michael's financial information, account numbers, passwords, investment portfolios. You took it from his condo." Understanding dawned. During the break-in at Michael's place, they must have been searching for his financial records. With their access blocked by the feds, they needed the physical backup. "I don't have it," I said truthfully. "I've never been to Michael's condo." Alejandra's face hardened with disbelief. "Search the house," she ordered Collins, who began limping toward the downstairs study. "You won't find anything," I called after him, "but the FBI will be here any minute." "The real FBI. They're busy with a situation across town." Alejandra smiled thinly. "An anonymous tip about a bomb threat. Very convincing, apparently." My heart sank. No immediate help was coming. I needed to buy time. "Even if you find what you're looking for, you'll never get away with this," I said. "Your face is known to every law enforcement agency now." "I've disappeared before," Alejandra shrugged. "New name, new face, new country. It's what I do." Behind me, Sophia whispered something I couldn't catch. I sensed her inching up the stairs, trying to put distance between herself and danger. Alejandra noticed to "Don't move," she barked at Sophia, "or the old lady gets hurt." I almost laughed at that. The old lady was the one holding the gun, but Alejandra's arrogance had always been her weakness. She consistently underestimated me. "Why, Michael?" I asked, hoping to distract her. Out of all the wealthy men you could have targeted, why my son? Something shifted in Alejandra's expression, a flash of genuine emotion breaking through her calculated exterior. He was kind, she said simply. Most men I target are easy marks because they're vain or lonely or stupid. Michael was, she hesitated, different. For a fleeting moment, I glimpsed vulnerability in this predator. Perhaps even a seed of real feeling for my son, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by cold pragmatism. Besides, his financial portfolio was impressive for someone his age, she added dismissive. Clean, diverse, liquid assets easily transferred. You never loved him, I said, though it wasn't a question. A shadow passed over her face. Love is a luxury in my profession. From the study came the sound of drawers being emptied, papers scattered. Collins was tearing my house apart. It's not here, I repeated. You're wasting your time. Alejandra's patience was visibly thinning. Where is it then? If not here, where would Michael keep his most important financial information? I said nothing, but something must have shown in my face because Alejandra's eyes suddenly widened with realization. A safe deposit box, she breathed. Of course, careful, cautious, Michael would use a bank vault. Her expression hardened. Where which bank? When I didn't answer, she stepped closer, just beyond the range where I could strike her with the gun. The keys, then. He must have given you a spare key. I have nothing of Michael's, I maintained, my voice steady, despite the hammering of my heart. Behind me, Sophia had managed to climb 2 more stairs without being noticed. If she could reach the top, maybe she could lock herself in a bedroom, call for help. Collins reappeared, limping heavily, his face flushed with frustration. Nothing downstairs, no drive, no financial papers, nothing useful. Alejandra's composure slipped further. Check upstairs. Every room. Collins looked at the stairs, then at me, blocking his path with the revolver, and hesitated. Move aside, Alina, Alejandra demanded. No. Her eyes flashed dangerously. You think I won't hurt you because of Michael? He already hates you for what you did. Your relationship is destroyed. The words stung because they carried a grain of truth. Still, I held my ground. If you want to search upstairs, you'll have to go through me. Something changed in Alejandra's demeanor then, a subtle shift from irritation to deadly intent. She nodded almost imperceptibly to Collins, who suddenly lunged toward me, despite his injured knee. I squeezed the trigger. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space of the stairwell. Collins jerked backward, clutching his shoulder where the bullet had grazed him. He howled in pain and outrage. In the moment of shock that followed, Alejandra moved with surprising speed, darting forward and seizing my wrist. We struggled for the gun, her strength catching me off guard. Behind me, Sophia screamed as Collins recovered enough to start climbing the stairs, reaching for her ankle. The gun discharged again, a wild shot that splintered the wooden banister. Alejandra's nails dug into my flesh as she tried to wrench the weapon from my grasp. We teetered precariously on the stairs, neither willing to yield. Let go, you stubborn old, she snarled. The front door exploded inward with a crash that shook the entire house. FBI, freeze, came a thundering command. Alejandra's grip loosened in shock. I yanked the revolver free and stumbled backward, nearly falling into Sophia. Agent Dawson stood in my shattered doorway, weapon drawn, flanked by 3 other agents with guns at the ready. Behind them, almost hidden from view, was Michael. For a suspended moment, no one moved. Then, Alejandra made a desperate lunge toward me, not for the gun, but for Sophia. I don't know what she intended, but she never reached us. 2 agents tackled her to the ground while a third secured Colin, who had collapsed on the stairs, still clutching his wounded shoulder. Mom! Michael's voice cut through the chaos. He pushed past the agents, taking the stairs 2 at a time until he reached me. His arms wrapped around me so tightly I could barely breathe. Are you hurt? Did they hurt you? I'm okay, I managed, my voice shaking as the adrenaline began to ebb. We're okay. Over Michael's shoulder, I watched as Dawson handcuffed Alejandra. Her eyes met mine, black with hatred, but also something like respect. You were never the easy target you appeared to be, she said quietly, almost to herself, as the agents led her away. Michael finally released me, only to notice Sophia standing behind us, blood still trickling from the cut on her forehead. "You're injured," he said, concern washing over his face. "We need to get that looked at." As an agent escorted Sophia downstairs to receive first aid, Michael turned back to me, his expression a complex mixture of emotions. "How did you know to come?" I asked, still clutching the revolver. "I tried calling to tell you we were on our way to get you," he explained, gently taking the gun from my hands and engaging the safety. "When you didn't answer, I got worried. Then Agent Dawson discovered the bomb threat was a diversion. We came immediately." His eyes traveled over the destruction of my home, the splintered door, bullet holes in the wall, scattered papers and broken glass. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, Ma." "For what?" I asked, bewildered. "For not believing you, for shutting you out." His eyes filled with tears. "You tried to protect me, and I treated you like you were the enemy." I reached up to touch his face, this boy who had become a man when I wasn't looking. "You were hurt. You needed time." He shook his head. "I needed my mother. And when you needed me today, I almost wasn't here." I pulled him close again, feeling his tears dampen my hair. Over his shoulder, I could see Alejandra being placed in a police car outside, her face a mask of cold fury as she watched us through the window. "It's over now," I whispered, as much to myself as to Michael. "She can't hurt us anymore." But looking at the wreckage of my home and feeling the tremors still running through my son's body, I wondered if that was entirely true. 3 months have passed since that day in my stairwell. Winter has given way to spring, and with it, a cautious rebirth has begun in our lives. My home has been repaired, new front door, patched bullet holes, repainted walls, though sometimes I still wake in the night thinking I hear glass breaking. The physical reminders are gone, but some scars remain invisible, etched into our sense of security rather than the drywall. Alejandra Or, Marisa Correa, which we now know is her real name, pleaded guilty to multiple charges of identity theft, fraud, and attempted kidnapping. The evidence against her network was overwhelming. She's serving 15 years in a federal prison, with additional charges pending in Canada and Mexico. Her accomplices received similar sentences, though Raul Vega remains at large. Last seen crossing the border into Mexico. The real Sofia Herrera stayed with me for 6 weeks after the attack. We developed an unlikely friendship, this quiet, thoughtful young woman for decades, my junior. She helped me sort through the debris of my violated home, repainted my kitchen, and taught me to make proper mole sauce. When she finally returned to Mexico, I drove her to the airport myself. "You will visit?" she asked, her dark eyes serious as we stood at the security checkpoint. "I promise," I replied, surprised at how much I meant it. "And you'll come back?" "Of course. You saved my life." She smiled, that gentle smile that had become familiar. "Besides, someone needs to check that you're not burning the child." We embraced, and I watched her disappear into the crowd of travelers, carrying with her a piece of this strange chapter in our lives. Michael has changed. The confident, sometimes cocky young lawyer has been replaced by someone more thoughtful, more careful with his trust. He sold his downtown condo to many bad memories and bought a house just 15 minutes from mine. He comes for dinner twice a week, a ritual neither of us misses, no matter how busy work becomes. Tonight is one of those dinners. I've prepared his favorite pot roast. The kitchen filled with the familiar aroma of carrots and onions and beef slow cooked until tender. As I set the table, I hear his key in the front door. I gave him one after the attack, and he gave me one to his new home in return. "Something smells amazing," he calls out, hanging his coat in the hallway. He appears in the doorway with a bottle of red wine and a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite. "You didn't need to bring flowers," I say, though I'm already reaching for a vase. "I wanted to," he replies simply. He uncorks the wine while I arrange the daisy, our domestic choreography now easy and familiar. Over dinner, he tells me about his latest case. After everything that happened, he took a leave of absence from the corporate law firm where he'd been building his career. When he returned to work, it was with a different focus. He now specializes in helping victims of identity theft and financial fraud. The pay is less, but the purpose is greater. I had a client today who reminded me of you, he says, helping himself to more potato. 73 years old, widowed, caught her caregiver stealing from her account. Everyone told her she was confused or mistaken. She hired a private investigator and gathered evidence for months before anyone would believe her. I smile. Smart woman. Stubborn woman, he corrects with a grin. Like someone else I know. We've reached a place where we can sometimes find humor in what happened, though the laughter often carries an edge. Have you heard from Sophia? He asks, as he often does. She called yesterday. She started teaching English at a private school in Mexico City. Seems to be enjoying. Michael nods, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. I'm glad she's doing well. There's something in his tone that catches my attention. You two got close during everything that happened. He shrugs, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. We bonded over a unique shared experience. Not many people can say they've had their identity stolen by the same woman. She's visiting in July, I mention casually, for 2 weeks. Is she? His forced nonchalance is almost comical. Well, we should take her to dinner or something. I hide my smile behind my wine glass. Some things a mother knows without being told. After dinner, we move to the living room with coffee. The evening has taken on a golden quality, sun streaming through the windows as it begins its descent. These moments have become precious to my ordinary time shared with my son, unthreatened by danger or deception. I found some old photo albums in the garage last week, I say, retrieving a dusty blue book from the bookshelf. Look at this one, your 5th birthday. We sit side by side on the sofa, turning pages filled with memories. Michael, as a gap-toothed kindergartner, family camping trips, his high school graduation with David standing proud beside him. I miss Dad, he says softly, as we study a faded image of David teaching him to Me too, I reply. Every day. He would have seen through her immediately, Michael adds after a pause. He always had good instincts about people. He did. I agree. But he also made mistakes. We all do. Michael closes the album, his fingers lingering on the worn cover. I've been meaning to ask you something. That day, with the gun, would you really have shot them? I consider the question carefully. I don't know, I answer truthfully. I hoped I wouldn't have to find out. But you were ready to, he presses, to protect yourself, to protect Sophia. There's very little I wouldn't do to protect the people I love, I say simply. He nods slowly, understanding the full weight of my words. After a moment, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small velvet box. I've been carrying this around for weeks, he explains, opening it to reveal his grandmother's engagement ring, the one he had planned to give to Alejandra. I couldn't decide what to do with it. The diamond catches the evening light, sending prisms dancing across the ceiling. It's a family heirloom, I say. It should stay in the family. That's what I thought too. He closes the box and returns it to his pocket. Maybe someday, when I'm ready, you will be, I assure him. Not everyone is. Alejandra. He smiles, a genuine smile that reaches his eyes. I know that now. As the sun sets, casting long shadows across my living room floor, I think about the journey we've taken these past months, the betrayal that nearly broke us, the violence that could have ended everything, the slow, painstaking reconstruction of trust. We bear our scars differently, Michael more cautious with his heart, me more vigilant about my surroundings, but we are healing together. Later, after Michael has gone home, I stand in my kitchen washing the dinner dishes. Through the window, I can see my garden coming back to life after winter's dormancy. New growth pushing through old soil. Resilience in its most basic form. My phone buzzes with a text message. It's Sophia, sending a photo of sunset over Mexico City with the simple caption, "Thinking of you both." I smile, drying my hands to reply. As I type, I reflect on how strangely life unfolds, how danger and deception led to unexpected friendship, how nearly losing everything helped us rediscover what truly matters. Alejandra thought she was destroying us. In the end, she made us stronger. I remember her words in the stairwell, just before the FBI burst through my door. You were never the easy target you appeared to be. She was right about that. At least I've never been an easy target. Not as a young immigrant's daughter finding her way in a new country. Not as a nurse facing life and death daily. Not as a widow rebuilding a life alone. And certainly not as a mother protecting her child. Age brings many things some welcome, like wisdom and perspective, others less so, like aching joints and reading glasses, but it also brings an invisibility that can be surprisingly useful. People look at a gray-haired woman of 67 and see someone diminished, someone past her prime, someone who no longer poses a threat. Alejandra made that mistake. She called me estúpida in Spanish, assuming I wouldn't understand. She dismissed me as old, weak, irrelevant, a hurdle to clear on her way to my son's fortune. She never saw me coming. As I finish the dishes and turn off the kitchen lights, I think about the lesson in all of this, not just for Alejandra, but for anyone who might underestimate women like me. We who have lived long enough to lose the need for others' approval, we who have endured enough to know our own strength, we who have loved deeply enough to fight fiercely for those we cherish. The world may overlook us, may dismiss us, may call us estúpida vieja when they think we can't understand. But we hear everything, we see everything, and when necessary, we act. Never underestimate a mother who speaks languages you don't know she speaks. Never underestimate the quiet woman watching from the corner. Never underestimate the power of someone who has nothing left to prove, only those she loves left to protect. That is the wisdom I carry forward from this chapter of my life. That, and a new recipe for truly excellent mole sauce.